Okay, so here's what we'll do with the CAGED system. So CAGED system, CAGED, corresponds to the open chord shapes. And with this system, essentially, you will take the caged open chord shapes, so the C open, the A open, the G, the D, the E open shapes, and you can move them up the fretboard, and they will all connect together, moving them this way up the fretboard. Playing in one position, they don't quite connect as easily, and you'll see why. So let's take the C chord, the chord itself, C, not just the shape, but the chord C, and we know it in the C shape. So okay, same thing, A, the G shape, E, obviously, and then the D shaped. We all know those shapes. So don't forget, as we move these shapes up the neck, we're still playing what would be the same as the open strings, so like the low E open and the E shaped. But in order to move it up the neck, we have to bar it as if we were moving the nut up the neck. So like, you know, the E shaped here and the E shape here and so forth. The same thing with the C shape. So like the C shape, when you move it up the neck, it actually looks like this. So there's your C shape. When you move it up the neck, there's the same shape, but you have to bar it as if you were using your index finger as the nut. So that's how you move that C shape up the neck. A shape, you know, the A shape is the same as like playing, you know, the A shaped chord. A lot of people may bar. Okay. And we're just covering the shapes right now, so you get a basic understanding. You know what the shapes are. We can go forward. So the lesson really hasn't even started yet. So, and then the G shape. The G shape's going to be, so that G shape. But instead, so if you move it up the neck, because you got a lot of open strings there, to move it up the neck, it's the same shape. But instead of playing this, remember we have to bar what would be those open strings. So it technically would look like this, where you've got but to get where those open strings would be, or where the net would be your index finger. That's quite a stretch, so we're not gonna, you almost play that in pieces instead of that whole form, but I'll show you when we get into this. The D shape, same thing. D, you move it up. You can move it up. To move it up that far, you would almost get something that looks like this. Again, it's quite the stretch. So even I have a hard time barring that one. But so most of the time you may end up just playing like that. So, okay, so we know our open shapes. So what we're going to do is we're going to play a C chord, and we're only going to play the C chord, the actual chord itself. And we're going to use the different shapes of the CAGED system to play the C chord the notes of the C chord. We're going to use the different shapes of the cage system to play that C chord, different positions up the neck. And as you move that C chord, not the shape, but the chord itself, as you move it up the neck, you will have to fall into these other caged shapes in order for it still to have the same notes as the C chord. So here's an open C. You know what an open C is. Here is also an open C, or here is also a C chord, but played in the A shaped. Here is also a C chord played with the G shaped. Here's the C chord played with an E shaped. Here's the C chord played with a D shaped. So and see, actually, if you look at it from the 12th fret, there's your C shaped. If you run the same C shape up here, an octave up, there's just an octave. Let's go ahead and bar that, so that way we act as the nut. And then you get that. So that's what that cage system does, but it allows you to do things like this. So I'm just going to play the C, the notes of the C chord, and we're going to connect all of the shapes together, and we're just going to play the notes of the C chord. And in order to connect it together, you throw in some slides or some hammer-ons to connect the shapes, but it's easy to transition, and it gives you the full access of the fret, the neck board or the fretboard, this way, and it allows you to connect all those same notes using these different caged patterns. So I'll only be playing the notes of the C chords, and there may be some fillers in between as I slide and connect the shapes. But so again. So that's the cage system. And so once you know that shape, you know the A shape. The G shape is the one that you need some practice with. So your root note again is going to be the C at the 8th fret, the 3rd, and so that's how you can connect all of those patterns together. Now, if you want to stay in one position and play, you can't connect. If you keep all of those caged patterns in one position, you won't be able to play the same C notes, the same notes of the C chord. What I mean by that is the only way to play the same notes of the C chord, if you're going after one static chord, the notes, is you have to move those shapes up the neck or down the neck. But you cannot keep those same notes you cannot play those in just one position using those other forms. It doesn't work like that. The only way to use the forms and play the same notes is to move it up the fretboard. So that's where you get into things where, like, you're soloing in the key of C and C major. You're playing a song in C major, and so you want to show that you have freedom over the fretboard and you can choose wherever you're going to play those notes. So you could that's what that allows you to do. It allows you to move up and down the neck playing those same notes, but in order to do that, to move up and down the neck, you have to use the CAGED system. There's no other way to do it. You can, even if you don't want to use the CAGED system and you know where those other notes of the C chord are, by definition, when you move up, like say, I'm not intending to play the CAGED system. I'm just going to, I know where all the notes of the C scale are, and I'm just going to play. By definition, and by the layout of the notes and the strings, it will end up being the CAGED system. It will. You can't not have it be, because that's just how it is. That's how the system, the guitar is built in relation to the number of strings, the tuning of the strings, and the architecture of Western music and the major scale. So you're like, well, I don't want to use the CAGED system. I'm just going to play C wherever I know the C scale to be. So. But see, by doing that, you're in the A shape. So when you move it up there and you're in the A shape, you're like, well, I'm not doing that. I'm playing the C scale. Correct, you are, but by default, it's in the A shape. I mean, you can't not do it. It happens regardless. Same thing if you want to move it up and you're like, I want to move up to the next fret. You're in the E shaped. Well, now you're in the G shape. Well, now you're in the D shape. And then you're back home at that C shape. So that's the CAGED system, basically. Just taking once you know where, and it all depends on, so you have to know where the root is that you're going to play. So like C, the open C shaped, your root is going to be right there, 3rd fret, A string. Okay. Same thing with the A shaped. That's a C chord because your root is still there, 3rd fret, A string. The G shaped, this is still a C chord because your root is there on the 8th fret, just like it would be here if you played, you know, an open C that you're used to. Same thing, the E shaped, your root again, low E string, 8th fret. The D shaped, your root is going to be on the D string, 10th fret, but again that's a C, so that's where your root is. So that's a C, that's a C, that's a C, that's a C, that's a C. Okay, so that's the CAGED system.